Okay, so thank you guys so much for coming and spending an hour with me. So we're gonna go over what does the kindergarten year of Montessori look like. So what I want to start with is by going through a few TEKS with you guys. So TEKS are the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. So it's basically like what a public school curriculum is kind of like based around. So, like, they have certain criteria that they meet in a public kindergarten classroom. Um, if you look up like Texas kindergarten TEKS, the document for that is like 30 pages long, going through all the different TEKS. So, we're not going to go through all of them today because that would take a very long time. But if you're interested in it and you have specific questions about certain TEKS, I'm more than happy to share. Because even though they're two completely different systems, like public school and Montessori, the Montessori curriculum does just naturally satisfy all of the TEKS. So that's what we'll talk about a lot of today. So there's 11 areas, and we're going to go through each area, but TEKS are divided into English, language arts, and reading, math, science, social studies, languages other than English, health education, physical education, art, music, theater, and technology application. So we're going to go through like one or two TEKS from each of those areas and talk about how what we do in our Montessori curriculum, especially in that like kindergarten year, how what we do is the same as what they're doing in public school. If not, what we're doing is we're actually doing what a kindergartner would be doing earlier. So we'll start with language. Um, and these are like really long and really wordy. So I'm going to try to just kind of like summarize what each of these TEKS are, because even sometimes, like, as an adult who works in education, it takes me like 3 times to read through these to understand, like, what are they saying? What are they trying to get these children to do? So, two TEKS from English language arts and reading are basically demonstrating and applying phonetic knowledge, so like the letter sounds that we focus on, um, and demonstrating that they can identify those things by matching common sounds to letters. So, um, say the letter K makes the k sound, they want them to be able to do that. And then using that knowledge of letter sounds to basically read and spell, and recognizing like the relationships between words. So when you change one letter, you make a new word. And the example they give is like pit, tip, tap. So you're changing one letter each time and making a new word. Um, and then so they want to do that with reading and with spelling. So spelling words, VC, CVC, and CCVC. So like CVC just stands for consonant, vowel, consonant. So like a 3-letter word like cat or mat. And then being able to spell words using those same like spelling patterns and being able to spell words from a list, like a high frequency list. And same for reading. So our work with the movable alphabet satisfies not only those two TEKS that we just talked about, but so many of the kindergarten English language TEKS. So even, oh, and something I want to point out. So we're going to see photos throughout this of work that our students now are doing that are satisfying these kindergarten TEKS. And every child in these photos is not yet 5. If they're 5 now, when the photo was taken, they were not 5. So this is stuff that our children are doing even before the kindergarten level. Like they're doing it when they're 3.5 or 4 or 4.5. So we're giving them these like kindergarten skills early, or not early, but when they're ready for them, which is younger than 5 a lot of the time. So the CBC words correlate with our curriculum with, it's called like the pink series. So if you look at these little cards, it's a picture of a mat, a hat, a bat, and then a van, a jar of jam, and a water dam. So the pink series is like pink picture cards that children are spelling these words out with. And if you can tell from the picture in the presentation, they're using the movable alphabet to spell those words. And this is something that they're doing completely independently. Um, I might sit with them and just say the names of what is in the picture just so they know what everything is. But once we've identified that together, they're spelling it on their own. And then we don't have this pictured, but the green and blue series come after the pink series. And that just has to do with like longer words, phonograms, and blends. So the CCVC words are, they correlate with the work we're doing. Um, So a lot of our work starts early and we're able to just like continue building upon it. Um, and next we'll talk about math. So to kind of condense this all together, basically they want them to understand how numbers relate to each other, and what numbers are. So being able to count forward and backward, from 20 with and without objects, being able to read, write, and represent numbers from 0 to 20, with objects or with pictures, being able to count a set of objects up to 20, to recognize, like to look at a picture of maybe like 5 apples and to be able to say that's 5, there's 5 of that. Um, and then using like pictorial models to say what is greater than the other. So if there's 3 apples on this side and 5 apples on this side, which one is greater? And then to be able to say what number is one more or one less than a number. So, say they give you 9, they want you to be able to say 10 is one more and 8 is one less. Um, and Montessori math really makes sure that children have a concrete understanding of numbers. And we always start with something physical that the children are manipulating so that they can really visualize and see what the quantity of number represents. So, like with the cards and counters, they're not only putting the numbers in order, so 1 through 9, they have to be able to know 2 comes after 1 and 3 goes after 2. So they're doing that sequence and then they're also quantifying those numbers by using the dots to physically represent, like, okay, this much is 4, this much is 7, and so on and so forth. And we start with numbers 1 through 10. And then after they have a really solid relationship with that, we're able to move into the teen beads. So again, they have like a physical thing that they're able to really see, like, okay, this is how much this thing is. And it gives them a very concrete understanding, being able to manipulate something like that, to where they not only can see the number, 17, and they see a 1 and a 7, they know that's 17. They've had the physical experience of like how much is 17. It's more than 10, it's less than 20. Um, so numbers 0 through 20, I feel like we really give them a really solid understanding of those numbers. And then even again, before the age of 5, we're working into the hundreds and the thousands. And it's super common for our like new 4-year-olds or, like barely 4.5-year-olds to be using numbers into the thousands. So not only do they already really have that solid understanding of 1 through 20, they're able to work so much beyond those numbers and beyond what is expected of them in a traditional kindergarten classroom. So we'll move on to science. So just a few, just 1 or 2 teaks um, from a long list, but a big part of kindergarten science curriculum in public schools is organisms and environments. So being able to identify the structures of plants and the parts of a plant, identify different structures that animals have to allow them to use their senses. So, cheetah uses its ears to hear and its eyes to see and its paws to move. Um, and then to kind of do like life cycle changes. So knowing the process of like a seed growing into a plant. Um, and then identifying ways that young plants resemble the parent plant. And so much of what we do in Montessori is based in nature and based in the natural world. So we have works that we do inside the classroom to show those kind of abstract concepts, like the parts of a tree. I think even our youngest children have had so much experience with this that they're able to say, like, these are the roots, these are the branches, these are the leaves. And same for a plant. Like they can say, this came from a seed and now it has roots, and this is the stem, and these are the leaves. So they're getting that kind of like abstract experience with it in the classroom, but then we do so much work outside working in the garden. And I think that is what gives even our youngest children the ability to have that knowledge in their brains of like, I know how a plant grows. I know that seeds sprout and they go from a sprout to a seedling to a full grown plant. And I can identify the parts of that plant because I've touched it and I've interacted with it and I've helped get it to that point. I've grown the plant and I got to really see um, how that works. So I think we do, I think we do a really fun job of explaining science to our, again, even youngest children. So by the time that they're 5, they're identifying plants like by name, and they don't need help in the garden. They know what's a weed and what's, something that we continue growing. So it's just one of the ways that we satisfy that science category. And next, so something I found really interesting when going through the TEKS is that social studies in kindergarten is very much um, like, how do I exist in society more than, you know, the presidents and knowing historical things. So, like if we look at, we'll start with 15, um, but like social studies skills includes democratically collaborating with each other when making decisions for the classroom or the school or the community, and using problem solving and decision making processes to identify a problem, think of a list of solutions, choose which is the best one, and evaluate the effectiveness of it. Um, and same for just like the way they're communicating. So placing events in chronological order and using words like before, after, next, last, yesterday, today, tomorrow, communicating information visually, orally, or in writing, creating and interpreting visuals, including pictures and maps. And again, that kind of just like, how do I exist thing of applying and practicing classroom rules for listening and responding respectfully. So I think, I say this, I know Stephanie says it, I think we all say it. Um, Children's work at this age is just like, how do I exist in community with others? How do I coexist amongst my classmates peacefully? That's so much of the work we do. So we're focusing on these skills as soon as they're in the classroom. So if you had a toddler recently transition, that is what we're focusing on, even though they're only 3. And this is something that they expect, kindergarteners, 5-year-olds to focus on. So, circle time is such a big part of what we do in kind of doing that work. So, when it's circle time, we practice, raising hands and taking turns speaking. And when it's someone else's turn to talk, like your voice is off and you're listening to them and you're engaging with them. And then when their turn is done, then your turn will be next. Or, if Miss Monica and I have a message for them, their job is to listen. And if we're asking them questions, we might take turns going around the circle and everyone gets a chance to answer. Um, Sometimes also during circle, we'll address like a problem that we've noticed in the classroom. So say it's, you know, Miss Monica and I have really noticed that our paint tray is very messy at the end of the day. Like, what can we do as a class to make sure that by the end of the day it's clean? And we involve the children in that process of like, oh, that is a problem. Like, what can we all do? And so again, we're encouraging even the youngest students to participate in that kind of decision making process, because we really emphasize that it's not my classroom or Monica's classroom, it's their classroom, it's their environment, and they're in charge of it. So if we notice something or if they notice something, it's up to them to ultimately decide how are we going to fix it. Obviously, we're there to facilitate the conversation, but they're ultimately the ones making the decision. And then just one more example of the puzzle maps, I think is more just like a traditional social studies lesson. Um, we, and again, all of these children are under the age of 5, and they're working with a puzzle map of North America. So we're bringing this awareness into their minds as soon as they're ready for it, which does tend to be earlier than 5. And then, so for languages other than English, this is actually a very new TEAG. Um, this is actually like this A and B bullets is the whole TEAGs for this section. Um, so it's new as in like 2024. And basically, if school districts are able to offer second languages, they should, is what this all says. Um, and they can offer a level of language in a variety of different ways, with traditional, like with the other teaks, they can, interject Spanish vocabulary throughout, if possible. And so we don't have photos for this because language is something that, we speak into the air. So I know Monica does her best to kind of like intersperse some Spanish vocabulary for everyone. And it is something that we are working towards implementing more because children are in a sensitive period for acquiring language at this time. The window of acquisition for language closes around 6. So this is kind of like the perfect time to introduce new words to them because they're already learning so many new words in their native language that it is pretty easy for them to take in words in other languages. And they're very interested in it. And then health education. So also kind of new. There's a lot more focus for the kindergarten teaks on mental health and wellness and social emotional development. So students are expected to identify their own feelings and emotions, practice self-calming techniques or self-regulating strategies, be able to like talk with their friends and discuss how one person can influence someone else's behavior, demonstrate new skills for making acquaintances, demonstrating respect and communicating appropriately with others, and identifying and practicing ways to solve conflicts with others. And this is something that is, I think, so important to just us as a school and to Montessori especially, is that self-regulation and that ability to identify what I'm feeling and know that I have the tools to deal with that feeling. Again, Monica and I are here to facilitate helping them. But something we really put a lot of work into is making sure that everyone has kind of like self-regulation techniques. So we're really big on breathing and taking a deep breath. That is how we start our day every morning at Circle. We have like a breathing bottle that everyone passes around to take a deep breath with. And it's something that we talk about at a neutral time. So before anyone's upset, it's the beginning of the day. We say, like, this is a way that we can calm our bodies. If we're feeling sad, if we're feeling upset, if we're feeling, XYZ, this is something I can do. We also have, I think, hopefully many of you have seen by now, our Peace Corner, and it's just a little space in our classroom where every child knows, like, if I'm having a big feeling, I can go here and I can take a break and I can calm my body. I can use, different tools to kind of relax until I'm ready to, go back into whatever I was doing before, until I'm ready to, pick a new work or play with a new friend or whatever it is. Um, so we are just always talking about feelings and how we can address them. Grace and courtesy in the Montessori curriculum, I think also addresses a lot of these teaks. So we do a grace and courtesy lesson on like greeting a new person or introducing yourself to a new friend, and we role play like how do you ask someone to play? Do you just go up to them and start, taking their whatever they're using, or do you go over and ask like, can I play with you? Can I work with you? Whatever it is. So again, these are skills that we're practicing at 3 and 4 and 2.5. We're practicing it as soon as they're in the classroom rather than waiting until they're in kindergarten or waiting until they're 5. Physical education. So um, this is kind of like PE-ish. So like demonstrating skills of chasing and fleeing and being able to like move out of someone's way fast enough so where you don't run into each other, during games, practicing correct techniques for motor development skills, and demonstrating safe practices by following rules, procedures, and directions during class and activities. So while we don't have like a formal PE class, we spend lots of time outdoors. And when we do that, it's usually not just like unstructured the entire time. We do, well, we facilitate games as often as needed. Oftentimes, children will just naturally make their own games with each other, and we're able to observe all of these things that I just went over. So maybe they decided they're playing dinosaurs, and like someone's a dinosaur and someone else is a person, getting chased. And we can see them doing these skills. We can see them chasing and fleeing and dodging, while, being safe with their bodies and no one's like crashing into things or falling over or anything like that. Um, and part of my work as a guide is to always be observing the children. So we're kind of always looking out for everyone's fine and gross motor development. Um, we've yet to see anyone who needs help in those areas. But anytime, say someone is not being safe, we're practicing that, like following teacher direction. So if I'm observing someone doing something a little too risky, I'm able to give direction and guidance, and they're able to listen. And same for even in the classroom, just practicing safety, following rules and procedures. Because Montessori has so many procedures, like there's a particular way to do most things. They're again absorbing from a super early age how do I follow rules? What is the procedure for, XYZ thing? So they're already getting to practice these skills. And then art. So creative expression basically just involves using a variety of medias at their skill level and being able to express their thoughts and ideas. So creating art using a variety of lines, shapes, colors, and textures and forms, being able to arrange components on their own to create art, and using a variety of materials to develop their fine motor skills while engaging in exploration through drawing, painting, printmaking, um, constructing art, and sculpting. So, again, this is such a big part of what we do in our classroom. Um, Art has always been something that's very important to me. And so I think that is something that one, children are just naturally drawn to. But it is also something that we really enjoy doing and enjoy doing with the children. So here we've got an example of a child who did her own drawing. So she's using her lines, her shapes, her forms, and then she made it her own multimedia thing by using scissors to cut it out. And so many times we'll see a child with, one sheet of paper that they've gotten multiple different mediums out to do one thing. So maybe they painted first and then they glued things to it. And then they cut the edges to give it like a pattern on the edge. Um, and then we also have an example of sculpting. So one of our children sculpted a mom holding a baby, and these are both things that both of these children did organically without me giving them the direction to do this. We just provide the materials and show them how to use it, the first time or two of like, this is how we hold a crayon, this is how you can draw with it, this is how you hold a paintbrush, this is how you can paint with it. And then we're really just letting them explore from there. And that's something that I think is so beautiful about Montessori, is that if you give the children the tools and you give them the space to explore, they will find their way to what you could teach them to do. They'll teach themselves and they'll find it themselves. So again, at the time of these photos, both of these girls were 4, and they're performing um, at a kindergarten level, and they're doing something that would be expected of a kindergartner in a traditional public school setting. And then, so similar for music, it's more creative expression. So students are expected to sing or play classroom instruments independently or in groups, sing songs or play classroom instruments from other cultures, um, move alone or with others to music using their fine or their gross and fine locomotor skills. So moving your body to music, dancing, um, performing simple part work, including beats versus rhythm, and basically being able to identify louder, softer, faster, slower. So um, again, this is kind of part of our everyday. So we sing as a class every day, and we do, a different song that we focus on each month, but we also have kind of a repertoire of like 7 or 8 songs that the children all know, and we've been singing them for a long time, and we're able to do things like, okay, we're going to sing the grizzly bear song, but we're going to sing it faster than normal or slower than normal, um, or we're going to do a different like rhythm with our hands or with our bodies. And we're also super lucky to have Mr. Sean come on Fridays, and he always brings instruments or something for the children to kind of manipulate. So they're getting to do all of these things. Um, if not every day. Well, we're singing every day, but the instruments and such every week at least. And then, so for theater, um, basically, students should be able to develop self awareness through dramatic play, explore space using expressive movement, imitate sounds, and imitate and recreate objects in dramatic play. And if you've ever met a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, this is again just something that they do naturally. It doesn't tend to be something that you need to direct them to do. So, say they're working with the cylinder blocks where they're taking out all of the cylinders. It's so common to, they're doing their work and they're arranging and putting them away where they go. But while they're doing it, they're pretending like these are little people and they're finding their houses, or we're playing outside and maybe we're gardening, but we're pretending we're giants and the plants are like small people and we're in this like big world around them. Same, a game we will play often is just like, can you make your body like mine? So I'm going to pretend to be a rock and I'm going to get really small and be a rock. Or can you be a sunflower and stretch up really tall and make your body big like a sunflower? And we'll do the same things with sounds. So, like, can you click your tongue? Can you make like a popping sound? Um, so again, these are things that are just like incorporated in our day to day. We're not giving, we're not necessarily giving like specific lessons over it, but it is a part of our work and it's a part of what they are learning. And then technology applications. So this is another very, very new one. You can see it was just implemented this year, so 2024 to 2025. Um, and basically, in a traditional kindergarten classroom, children would have exposure and experience with like using a computer or using like some sort of like smart pad device. And so it's not traditional for true Montessori classrooms to have technology present in the classroom. Um, and as I'm AMI trained and we are a Montessori school, we do not have technology present in our classrooms either. Aside from, Monica and I using our phones to take photos every now and then. So our my philosophy on this is, we know technology is very prevalent in our society, in our world right now. Um, and it's something that children are exposed to more and more. But I'm confident that if we're giving them a strong basis of learning and of curiosity and having that kind of drive to learn new things, um, and to want to know how things work, we're creating minds that when they move on to, their next school or as they get older, they will be able to learn how to use a computer. Um, I'm very confident that every child in any school at this point will know how to use a computer. And there's so many other things to learn at this age that we would kind of rather focus on the so many other things when it's inevitable that they will learn how to, use a device. So that is the one teak that we don't cover. Um, but there's so much exposure in every other part of their life outside of school that it's not something that we're super worried about at this point. So really quick, we'll just go over kind of some of the advantages of staying for the kindergarten year. So the role in Montessori of that final third year is really a culmination of the previous 2 years of learning. So the third year is when we really start to get to see that deeper knowledge fall into place. So much of the work that they've been doing up until that third year is concrete. They're manipulating something, they're getting to feel and see and experience whatever they're learning. And by the third year, they're able to abstract those ideas. So, say with math, for example, they've spent so much time manipulating something, um, and using, physical objects to understand numbers, that by the time they're 5 and they're in the kindergarten year, they're able to do, um, you know, like addition or subtraction or multiplication or division just like on a piece of paper with numbers and not having to see something. Um, the kindergarten years when we get to really get into like the complex work that has kind of higher expectations and privileges. So there are certain works that are not available to our 2 and 3 and 4-year-old friends because you have to be 5 to have this lesson. So say like some of the puzzle maps, like the puzzle map of Asia is super complex and has lots of teeny tiny pieces. And that's not something that you have the privilege of doing until you're old enough to do it. Um, Another benefit that I think is really important is just the ability to learn at their own pace. So, when oftentimes when children come from a Montessori classroom into a traditional public classroom, the first few months of public kinder are children coming from all different areas. Like some of them have only been home up until that point, some of them have been in daycare, some of them have been in preschool. And so those first few months are really getting everyone in the same place. Um, so lots of children who come from Montessori are kind of waiting for others to catch up because they've already had the experience of I know how to be in a classroom. I know how procedures work. I know how to internalize, like, okay, I come to school and I put my things away and I sit down and I get, XYZ. So if they stay with us for that third year, there's no adjustment period. We're just continuing on, and building into that big work that they're ready to do. Um, and they're also, so I really love that we're able to focus on where they need the most help. So, say they're reading at 4.5 and they know all their sandpaper letters and they are using the movable alphabet and they're reading and spelling just fine, but they don't have the easiest time with math. Then I'm able to say, okay, I know you can read. We don't need to focus on this stuff as much. Let's spend more time on your numbers and let's spend more time doing, addition, subtraction, whatever it is, until you feel just as confident doing this as you do the other things you're already really good at. Um, It's also so the kindergarten year is also just like so empowering for our 5 and 6-year-olds. It's their chance to be a leader in the classroom. And so you see a lot of like self-esteem and confidence build in that third year. Um, a common thing to do for our kinders is to say, you know how to use the trinomial cube. Can you give so and so a lesson? And so not only are they getting that exciting feeling of like, oh, like I know how to do this, I can teach someone else. That feels really good to be able to show someone who's younger than me how to do something. They're also getting the opportunity to exercise their knowledge. They're getting to practice what they know, which is just a really great way to kind of cement that knowledge in their brains. Um, Getting to show someone something is just like a really time tested, proven way to make sure that the knowledge is in there. And then so part of the kinder year is my role as the guide and the environment's role in supporting that child. So having spent 2 years with that child up until the kinder year, um, we know them very, very well. So we know what their strengths are, we know what they need help in, and we're able to dive deep into, whatever areas they need. And not only school wise or academic wise, but it's like social emotional. Like if we know like so and so is has a really hard time with transitions or, you know, has trouble sharing or whatever social emotional thing it is, we already know that about that child. And that's something that we can continue to build on and continue to work on with them, rather than being in a new class with a new teacher who doesn't know anything about you yet and might need more time to find those things out and then needs more time to figure out, okay, how do we address those things? So our relationship with the children, um, just gets to grow and to get stronger. And the other, I think, really great benefit is your child already knows their classmates. They are in a safe, supportive classroom. There's no, when you think about it, when you're 5 years old and you're walking into a room for the first time and you're seeing maybe like 20 to 27 other kids that you've never met before, that can be a really overwhelming feeling and that can be really hard for them. um, but if they stay for the kinder year with us, there's not that big surprise and that big adjustment of like, whoa, this is an entire new classroom of kids. If anything, we're getting a handful of new students throughout the year, but they already know a majority of the kids. So there's not that big social adjustment, that you have going into a traditional kinder setting. But yeah, so yeah, that was my all the information I had to share. Again, there are so many teaks in all 11 of those areas. So if you have specific questions about any area, um, or just questions in general, now is the time. And if no one has any questions, that's okay too. I'm glad it was helpful. Yeah, and again, there's so many teaks, um, but I have read through them all, more than once. So I can guarantee you everything we do at our school it's in there. Um, it's just so surprising to me every time. Like Montessori was developed like centuries ago, but it was so ahead of its time and is already addressing the things that, children now are asked to do. Hmm. Thank you, everyone.